They give you a space to meet, they give you a space to do physical activity. They are usually free public spaces, so they don't discriminate. They are usually green spaces, so they help with the environment. We are here today to hear from Yaidee Fox, Assistant City Manager, Lindsay Keisler, the President and CEO of the Chamber of Catawba County, and Meg Nealon, from Nealon Planning. And I am going to now hand the microphone over to Yaidee and let her speak. And Yaidee, you need to hold it really close.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Yaidee Fox. I'm with the city of Hickory. I'm one of the assistant city managers with the city, and I have had the great fortune to be able to talk to you about this from a personal standpoint as well as a professional standpoint because I've been with the city for the last 22 years. And so I have literally been on the same walk as the community as we've went through this endeavor. And so as I talk to you today, we're going to go through a presentation, talk about the history, how we got to where we are, why we did what we did, and then just a little bit of takeaways at the end. And then I'll sit down and then we'll do some panel discussion. And then if we have time, then we'll open it up to the group. We're hoping to be able to have time, but I've got to watch myself. I get very passionate, and so I'll try to watch the time on it. So I apologize in advance if I go a little long. All right, so just to kind of give you a little bit of history with the city of Hickory and the region. So first of all, the city of Hickory is a population of about 45,000. We are the largest city in our metro. We actually are in Catawba County, Caldwell County, and Burke County. But the metro is four-county region, and so it also includes Alexander County. And so what we saw was between the time period of 2000 to about 2010 was when we really started assessing things, and we started looking at the data. We saw a huge job loss in our entire region of about 45,000. We realized that we needed to start doing some things like how can we increase the job opportunities, but also we started seeing a huge loss in population from the ages of about 18 to 44. That's the age that starts having families, being able to help grow our population. And so certainly we were seeing a huge drop in that as well. What we saw was that the community kind of rallied together and wanted to bring forth a variety of different options. There was already an effort kind of going in place in the community. We had about 250 businesses that were working together with Catawba County, with the city of Hickory, with Catawba County EDC, with the Chamber of Commerce, along with a lot of other partners doing an initiative called Innovate Catawba. For those of you in the community, you might be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." But that was an effort of people kind of getting together, a committee of 100, saying we need to do something. Something has got to change. We've got to get some jobs. We've got to be able to spur the economy. At the same time, the city of Hickory and our city council had also made the effort to look at what we needed to do to help revitalize the community. So we went to 5 different southeastern cities that all had a variety of different impacts that had affected them. Whether it was they had nationwide really bad reputations for don't go there, or if somehow the community was just leaving. So we visited Chattanooga, Tennessee. We visited Greenville, South Carolina. We visited Roanoke, Virginia. We also went to Durham, North Carolina. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina. We went to Asheville, North Carolina. We went to a variety of different areas. What we heard and saw was that there needed to be a plan to be able to provide amenities to the community. There needed to be connectivity. There needed to be able to be opportunities for people to be able to bike, walk, run, whether it's to work, whether it's to play, or whether it's to be able to just live within their communities. And so we actually brought forth a group together for something we called Inspiring Spaces. When we were trying to come up with the name, I remember we were throwing around a variety of different names, and we were trying to describe what these green spaces were going to be, what these connections were going to be. But then it was like, well, what do we want it to achieve? We want it to inspire people. And so literally that's where the name came from. And so as we started working on this, we got a committee of about 22, and we worked with land design, which Meg was a part of at the time. And whenever we worked with them, they looked at all of our master plans that we had, was able to put it together, and then we started working with the committee. So there was twofold happening. There was the community effort because we had the committee of 22, but then there was also what we were doing internally, working with the design firm, trying to see if we could help provide that connectivity. So as we proceeded around, we did all the things. We went to Swamp Rabbit Trail, we rode the trail, rode the bikes. I don't want to see the video or footage of me doing that, but there's a lot of other people that are a lot more gifted than I am in that capacity. But then we also opened it up to the community. So we did a lot of community input meetings. We had so many that I think we had over 500 people engaged at a certain point in time. And during this time period, the Inspiring Spaces Committee was gathering this information as well as staff, and then we were able to put something together. As you can see on the screen, that input led us to be able to put together the bond referendum, which we focused for it to be $40 million, with 15 million going to economic development opportunities, and then the rest going into streetscapes, gateways, and other connectivity avenues. So the primary focus for the Inspiring Spaces plan was to help spur our economy and help to provide that economic stability. So when we went on these trips and spoke to the other communities, we asked them, "Hey, what did you see that made it successful?" And a lot of the things that they said was people wanted to just be able to get literally out of their business, walk out, take a break, go grab something to eat, go shopping during their lunch, or be able to walk home or ride the bike home and just have that sense of connectivity. And it was like apparently things just started morphing from there, right? The development started happening. So we thought, well, we we've got to do something because if we don't, nothing's ever going to change. And so certainly we started looking at the ways that we could help provide that same quality of life and to be able to help provide that sense of identity of who we are in our region, but also provide that sense of place. And then also preserve those open spaces, some of which are a little bit larger than others in our community. So these are actual concepts from our Inspiring Spaces plan. We had gateways, which you can see currently. One of them, the one on the bottom that says Hickory on the Bridge, that's from our aviation walk section, that's over 321, and the other one that has the leaves on it is actually on 321 just as you're coming into downtown. We wanted to focus and highlight special places, so there's great opportunities for a variety of different cultures along the pathways everywhere, whether they're murals or whether they're artwork or whether it's just beautiful landscaping and features in the community. And then highlighting what we have to be able to showcase. What's been great is we have a connectivity with the City Walk, being able to connect Little Rand University right off of the trail. But then you also can go over around the Ole Art Walk and connect over with the Aviation Walk, and it takes you over to Appalachian State University. And then when we open it, the CBCC Dale Earnhardt Innovation Complex. So realizing that there are a variety of different connections all around. Also, there's an opportunity for people to literally be on the city walk and be about 3 blocks over from a local hospital because for our regional medical center is right off of that as well. And then you can see parks. So this was another concept. While the bond referendum focused on a variety of different things, we as a city, we do have over 26 parks, and we wanted to highlight the connectivity to that. So as we work on things, we had started saying, how can we provide better connectivity to be able to get people to those parks? I mentioned earlier greenways. So the back picture is what's in our Inspiring Spaces original plan. The map that you see that's on top of it is actually the current, what we call Hickory Trail. So the original Hickory Trail was supposed to be about 5 miles. When we did the bond referendum, we said, we've got $40 million. This is what we've got. And we were able to utilize those dollars to be able to leverage them for some additional grant dollars. Some of those were from the federal government, some were from the state government, some of them were from our local MPOs. And we were just able to be able to get that to be able to extend it. I'm happy to say that now it's about a little over 12 miles. That is 10-foot multi-purpose pathways. And then there's our streetscapes. Well, we wanted to enhance the opportunity for people that are bike walking and running, but also drivers, being able to make sure that they're in the safe distances where people can get a run into the communities. And so being able to enhance that, but also being able to attract people into the community. Because when you go to a community, what's the first thing you notice? You notice how it looks. You notice how it makes you feel. You notice if it makes you feel warm and fuzzy and welcomed, or if it looks dilapidated and dirty. And so we have to take pride in what that looks like. And so certainly we focused on that as well. So I mentioned earlier we had a lot of input meetings. We did a lot of community canvassing. You can see here, Lindsay actually is in this photo from way back when. But we were trying to get as much input from the community as possible to just try to make sure that when we're going in the right direction. But also, it's important to have that support, right? Because if the community is not behind it, then you don't have anything to go on as far as local government and from our leadership from city council. So we did a huge educational outreach push. I tried to gather as much data because my brain could not remember all of the things that we did. But when city council adopted our Inspiring Spaces plan and said, we're moving forward with this, and we started immediately working on what we were going to do with the bond referendum. Staff moved forward with an educational push. We only had, once city council voted to do a bond referendum by state statutes, we're only allowed to talk about it for about 2 weeks, and then we have to stop talking. Then it's up to the community, which is why it's so important to have that community support and the community buy-in, because at a certain point, government has to stop talking. And so during that time period, we did more than 25 presentations to civic groups, churches, community meetings, all within those 2-week time periods. You can see there we also did an additional 460 presentations to all of those different groups that are listed. Well, reached out to about 460 people in those different groups. And then we decided, hey, what better way than for people who aren't able to access these meetings or people that don't know about it in some way, shape, or form? Let's do a video. So we launched a 14-minute educational video that we put on our website. We shared all over our social media, and it actually helped educate people on what the spawn referendum would do once it passed. We wanted to help provide the information about what is it going to provide, why is it important, and also what does that mean to the taxpayer once they get their bills. We showed all of that in that video to help provide that with an example for what it would look like with their tax bill. And so once we had to stop, this is when the community took off. So a couple of our city council members actually worked with the community doing a campaign called Boost Hickory, because obviously we wanted to boost our economy. All right. And so the private businesses worked together to help educate the public on that. They were sharing the same information. What we were hearing was we want to be able to access the waterfront. A lot of people didn't even realize we were right on the water because they may not have ever seen it other than driving across the bridge. We want to be able to enhance those central business districts, not just downtown, but all over the city. Everything needed to be revitalized. We needed to work on those commercial corridors with our street improvements and the streetscapes. And then we also wanted to have a business park because we needed to have that opportunity for those larger companies and industries coming into the area. Where could they go? And so with great effort, and you can see here our Mayor Hank Guess in this photo. Sorry, he's in the room, but he's telling me to silence. Um, but what you can see here is we were very excited and beyond elated to hear the support from the community because it passed with 67% voters. And when you think about municipal elections, sometimes it's not as large of a turnout generally as other elections, and so for us to have that momentum behind it was huge, and we were so grateful and humbled by the support that the community provided, and so it passed, and we were very excited because now we could get started. So we created a bond implementation commission, which Meg became a part of. And then we also started working towards how we could stretch our grant dollars as well. We looked at what we needed to do, working on where we were going to start first and what was the focus and prioritizing things. And there was so much work that went into this. They divided them into subcommittees. We had these open for the public anytime they wanted to come to these. And so we wanted to make sure people understood that it was the bond dollars, but also it was business investment, and then it was the grant dollars, and then it was anybody else that wanted to help provide some of that funding that would go towards it. So some of our success stories, it the city walk. This is all considered part of our Hickory Trail system. The city walk, the river walk, the historic Ridgeview walk, the aviation walk, which is in our aviation district, and downtown Union Square, and then our corporate Tribune Corporate Center, which is our business park. And so you can see here just a few before and afters. I'll just share a quick story about the downtown part. So I had planned on later sharing, what was one of the challenges that we had. Um, when we were communicating what we were about to do, one of the things that we realized was that we needed to take a pause when we were working with the downtown. And we were so grateful for the opportunity to revisit this. So we redesigned it. We pulled it separately from the city walk because originally they were together because the city walks actually had NCDOT dollars tied to it. And so what we realized is we needed to keep that one going. The momentum was already there. It was, a 10-foot multi-purpose trail. The Union Square was different because it affected all of these downtown businesses and residents that were in the area. And so we put a little bit more time on it, and they were strictly just bond dollars that went towards the downtown renovation. When we had these conversations, we realized we also needed to look at some of our policies. So one of the things that we did was originally, and I wish I would have had a different picture here, but originally people could not go out very far from the front of their doors to do outdoor dining. We had a restriction that the city had put in a policy that said you could only go so far because we needed our fire trucks to be able to go right in the front of the businesses in case there was a fire or some kind of an emergency. However, upon talking to everybody and working with our fire department, making sure that we had the structure that was going to be there to be able to provide that access, you can see there's a big wide pathway now through our downtown. That was on purpose. So the wide pathway there is to be able to provide it strong enough for a fire truck to be able to reach. And then we worked with them to make sure that they would have access to all of those businesses. When I did that, we also changed the footprint for outdoor dining, which also made it great too, because now we have outdoor events. So there's a lot of music that goes on. There's movie theater opportunities for families to come and gather. And then there's a lot of outdoor space in general that is now focused. I will say during COVID, we had just finished the downtown renovation and then COVID happened. And when it did, we noticed that a lot of people came to our downtown because there was a lot of outdoor seating areas. And so they were able to come and eat with their families. They were come and have outdoor meetings with their businesses. And it was a great opportunity that just happened to work out. And so we were very fortunate that all of that timing kind of worked out in place. Plus, people were starting to use the city walk. The gyms were closed. They weren't able to get somewhere. So they were utilizing these spaces. So we also have a river walk. You can see the beautiful dark picture with the lights on at night. You can see where they were working on it before. One of the things that we heard from the community was they just wanted to be able to have that access to the waterfront. There is a portion that is on land that goes right just at the end of the bridge that that portion is not ADA if you're on it because it does have a little bit of a trek with the grade going up. However, the bridge is completely ADA compliant, so because it did receive some grant dollars from NCDOT, and so it's a beautiful opportunity for the community to get out there. And last I heard, I think it was one of the most popular places for people to get engaged. So that's always nice. All right, so Trivium Corporate Center, this is a wonderful opportunity and partnership that we actually have with Catawba County government and Catawba County EDC. And so if I had another one of those things that we would do over, um, we when we did this, we were already, we were starting at ground zero. And had we had known the success of what we would have, moving forward, we would have probably done a larger business park. So much so that we ended up buying the property across the street. And now we have Trivium Corporate Center and Trivium East because the business park is actually filled up a lot faster than we anticipated. We estimated that it was probably gonna take several years for us to fill it up, and it's almost completely full now, and so that's why we bought the property across the street to help be able to expand that. And a lot of the businesses that came to Trivium Corporate Center came because, 1, they saw what we were doing in the area. They saw the buy-in from the community. They saw all of the amenities. They loved what we were already doing, which was like some of our mountain bike trails that were already in existence that were pre-bond. But they also saw the trail system that was going through the area. And then they saw how much the community and the businesses rallied together. And then we also did a trail in the corporate center for the business park as well. And again, everyone just wants that connectivity and the ability to be able to use that. And so the aviation walk is another component. So this one we were able to do, it was new, added on a little bit later into the project. And the reason why is because we were working on trying to get federal dollars. It went through an iteration of changes of names, but used to be called the Tiger Grant, if you're familiar with that. And then when we got it, it was the Build Grant. I'm not sure what the new name is to it now, but oh, the Raise Grant, thank you. And so, after 4 tries, we were successful to get, 17.6 million, to be able to put into this pathway. And so it provides connectivity. You can see in the picture with the faraway, baseball stadium, it goes all the way up to the airport. So it actually connects another mode of transportation, to the trail system. And then it goes past the baseball stadium, and then it goes across 321. And so 321, for those of you that don't know, was gonna be a 6-lane super street. And so once it becomes a super street, there's not going to be a safe way for pedestrians to cross. And so Wall worked with NCDOT to make sure that we had something that was going to be in place once they did that expansion. And so that's the reason why we did the bridge. It comes over into a nice little parklet, and then it connects to the rest of our trail system. And then we have the historic Ridgeview Walk, which is on the south side of Hickory. It actually connects the amenities of our park, but also our library system, and it connects over to Highway 70. And that actually provides another opportunity for a grocery store that's there, as well as an apartment complex. And so, as we're working on those connectivities, we're starting to see growth popping up along those corridors. And then our Ollie Art Walk, or sometimes called and Ollie Art Walk, I think I've heard a variety of different enunciations for it, is the connection piece on Old Mill Road. And it's from the downtown that goes over and connects to the Riverwalk, but also connects to our Aviation Walk. And so you can see our segments have kind of been coming along. This has been a process, of course, for the last couple of years. So our bond referendum passed in 2014. During that time period, we did work on the grants. So we were able to extend that, as I mentioned before, from a 5-mile trail. But also, what we were able to do was leverage with the grant dollars to get it to $115 million in infrastructure improvements with the multimodal transportation and also with our Trivium Corporate Center. We set goals. If you've ever been to Atlanta and saw the Beltline, they have a demographic study that they do for what is our economic growth that happens along this belt line. And so one of our assistant city managers had actually said, "Look, we should be doing something similar to that." And so we worked with the Western Piedmont Council of Government and started working on these goals. Our goals were set for 15 years. Fun. Probably within a 5-year time period from the moment that we started the goals. We had never expected that. So we were able to make $40 million into 115. We were able to have just in a half-mile buffer of all of our trail system and Trivium Corporate Center, over 1,500 new jobs. And then private investment, again, just in this buffer area of $845 million, including Trivium, and then provide new housing along the trail system and over at Trivium of over 1,300. And I say that to say we measured this from the buffer area, but there's a lot more growth happening in investments from private businesses all around the area, and not just in Hickory, also in Catawba County, also in the region. And that's what's been a beautiful thing is it's more than just our story. It's the story of our region. It's the story of resilience, of how we realized that we needed to do something and make these changes. And so, if I could give you a few takeaways from what we did and what we learned for some successes, is having a vision, developing a plan, making sure that you have local government leadership that's in place that's willing to do that. Also, having the community and the private sector support. Again, we could not have done what we did without the community. None of this would have happened without them. And then having those dollars. So if city council wouldn't have said, yes, let's go ahead and appropriate those dollars. Let's do this bond referendum. Let's get moving. But also if we didn't have the staff that worked so hard to get the grant dollars and try to secure those and try to leverage those dollars to be able to provide it, we would not have been where we were. And then patience. Nothing happens overnight. I wish it would. It'd be awesome, but one of the things that we heard when we visited all the other communities was how much time everything took. One, we needed time for the community to understand what we were trying to do and why it was important, but also they needed time to be able to gather more support. And then we needed time to be able to work on a good plan that was going to be in place. And so one of the things that we've seen is that people have just started migrating all around the region for a variety of different reasons. But the communities in every area around us are all investing in their own communities, doing their own streetscapes, putting in connectivity. In fact, we are connecting all of our trails to other communities that are not the city of Hickory because we want to. We all want to connect together. And so we're seeing that connectivity all about, and that energy has really driven what we've seen is a great success now. And so here's my contact information. I'm always happy to answer anything if anybody has any. And with that, I'm going to transition and sit with our panel and ask a few questions, and then hopefully we'll have some time for the group. Okay, we'll start with Meg.
This is working. I think it is. Can you hear that? Okay.
All right, can you describe your role in designing the master plan and what it inspired you for the vision of the project?
Sure. Okay. So it's been a few years. So I co-led a little bit closer. How's that? I'm right up on it. Okay, great. So I co-led the project with my colleague Beth Poovey when I was still at Land Design. She's still there. And it's probably still one of our favorite projects. But our role was, as Yaidee mentioned, it was first and foremost an economic development initiative. So that's where our attention was. But our real charge was to evaluate the public realm and start to look at it from the standpoint of what improvements could be made that would actually move the needle on the quality of life for current and future residents, but also thinking about the ways that we can identify those impactful projects that not only folks who are here or thinking about moving to Hickory could justify an investment here, but also attracting private investment and making it an attractive place to invest. So as we got into the project, I would say that the things that inspired us the most were the people, number one, because there was already a passion building for what the opportunity was. But I think we were struck by the desire for connection. So naturally, when we scoped the project, we were paying attention to the physical aspects of the public realm. But as we got further into the project, it was really about the people and that desire to connect to the assets, like having these experiences, connecting to each other, because those experiences meant that people were having shared experiences, and that obviously builds bonds in the community. But I think we were also interested in how we could facilitate people having a stronger connection to the city in general, whether they were already here or thinking about coming here. So I think it was that level of connection that just went so much deeper than the physical place.
Excellent. Thank you. In your opinion, what is the most critical aspects of the community engagement when developing a master plan? And were there any surprises or unique challenges?
So I would say that, and I think most people in this room would agree, that the kinds of things that you face with public engagement is, one, you want to surface the best ideas. So that's a critical piece of it. But also, from day one, you're always building support, trying to get that buy-in so that the project really does take on a life of its own, and there's a sense of ownership of it. So some of the things that we were interested in there is making sure that we were listening and documenting what people were sharing, and then coming back to them after exploring it on our own to validate some of the ideas that were coming forward. But we also blended that with our own observations. So what we thought was really interesting is the folks in Hickory had gotten so used to all the cool things that were here that they started to take it for granted. So we were noticing things that, as outsiders, we thought were really cool and really true benefits for the city to leverage. So one of those being how much acreage was on Lake Hickory. Like, that was unheard of, how much public land was controlled with frontage on the water, but also so much was already in play as cool places to connect. So we were pointing those things out. So the blending of ideas started to help build some of that buy-in. I would say that one of the other pieces too with the challenges is just that sense of, there's a little bit of skepticism. So Hickory had been through a lot, and so helping people recognize that these things really can happen. They don't have to look at it through the lens of today's resources. And as you've seen, this evidence of change through grants and private investment, that really did start to move the needle.
I couldn't agree more. I just want to add to what you just said, because I didn't mention this, but we actually had several businesses that chose to stay in Hickory that were thinking about moving outside of our region, like Transportation Insight. I know they've shared this story many a times. They were one of the ones that worked on the Boost Hickory campaign, but the reason why they chose to stay here was because they saw the effort that the community was doing, and that the local government was willing to get behind it with dollars too. And so they stayed. Then we had our first real downtown apartment complex that had 100 apartments built into it with mixed use below it that actually is across from City Hall. That was actually done as well because they wanted to be right on the trail system. And that place is so full, they have a waiting list. And it also spurred another complex and another complex that's in the future. And people just want to live near all of that. So to your point, it's like to be able to see those things happening has been astounding. But we knew it was going to happen because we saw it in other communities. We just needed to be able to have that support and the guidance and the vision that you all put together, but also the support from the community, and be able to start seeing it take place and take shape. Okay, great. Another question for you. Have you noticed any emerging trends in the community desires that informed you in your design decisions?
Sure. So I would say that so people want to connect, right? And so when we think about these types of projects and doing this type of master plan, we focus first on the places and the connections. But as we explored it further, we know that we can go well beyond function and aesthetic and start to create places that foster social connection. So that was a big one. But as we got people engaged in it and thinking about it, it was really refreshing to us that that the ideas that were coming forward, so building on that, it's not just the investment from the private sector, but the community saw some real opportunities for activity to already start happening. So a group of private individuals, while the process was still going on, jumped in and made some decisions about how to raise money privately to move forward on a park downtown. So they essentially started implementation before the project was even done. So that level of engagement we thought was really cool. They wanted a place to bring families together. So one of the big contributors was Lowe's Foods, Alex Lee. And so with that kind of private support, they moved forward with a children's park that I think gets used year round. So it's a really cool thing that people were not just looking. I mean, yes, it needs to be attractive so people form really positive opinions about the community when they visit. But beyond that, being able to do some things that really bring people together. And that was a side thing that was done totally privately. So that was encouraging.
I appreciate you sharing that, because certainly it's right along the trail as well. But to her point, it was coming beforehand, and it gets used all the time. It's all year round. There's always families that come to it. So it's a highlight for the downtown, and I really appreciate you highlighting that. All right, we're going to transition over to talk a little bit about the private sector. So Lindsay, I mentioned earlier the importance that we had of the business community, and the chamber, of course, is obviously one of those champions, and we really appreciated the support. So the chamber and the business community were instrumental in creating that vision that ultimately led to the bond referendum and economic transformation. From your perspective, why was it important for the business leaders to be at the table, and what role did they play in building the momentum for the vision?
Yeah, so this has been really special to think back on this whole story and really how far we've come economically. I started at the chamber in 2010, and so I was a little on the periphery. I was senior vice president during all of this, so I was a little bit on the periphery, but it made a huge impact on me professionally, just seeing how it really does take, when it comes to community transformation, one sector cannot act alone. And so I think that that's really important to really think when you're going through projects and processes like this. It really does take that public and private partnership. And so in terms of bringing business leaders to the table, I feel like it's important to paint the picture of that 45,000 job loss in our region, the unemployment rate that spiked at 14.2%. We lost 1 in 4 young professionals that left our area, which was ended up being in total about 30,000 citizens lost to our region. And so when it comes to business leaders being at the table, they understood the urgency. They were feeling it very, very directly. And so the chamber recognized that we had to do something, but at the same time, the public sector had the same vision as well. We had to do something, but something really bold in order to make that transformation occur. And so this economic development strategy that was happening countywide, as Yaidee referred to as Innovate Catawba, was working in tandem with this process that the city of Hickory had already spurred. The leaders for the city of Hickory had already spurred. And so creating that momentum of having 250 private sector leaders some of the most influential leaders of our community come together and have powerful conversations around the future trajectory of our local economy was really important. It created quite the spark that allowed for the bond referendum to actually pass ultimately. And so what started in 2013 as Innovate Catawba, which we were able to rally around 6 different key priorities, one of which was reinventing communities, which really again spurred that forward momentum that has resulted in these projects coming to fruition. Business leaders, we understand the ability that you've got to take calculated risk. And so not only their future competitiveness, also their workforce potential was at risk. And they were the ones that were willing to invest more in property tax dollars in the event that that did not yield the impact that it actually indeed did. And so I think it's important that having the public sector buy in, but also the perspective of the business community and also the influence of the business community to be able to make this happen. And so I think when it comes to any project like this that you're going to tackle with your communities, that both the private sector and the public sector are at the same table.
Excellent. Thank you. I agree with you completely on that. We often hear public investment yields private investment. How has that proven true in Hickory, and what does that look like from the business community's perspective?
So we've seen this as a living case study. Public investment did indeed yield private investment. Cities that invest in themselves are worthy of new citizens as well as business investment, and that's truly happened. I mean, think of the examples that have come out of this, or the successes. You have 40 million that was leveraged to over 125 million. That has resulted in 10x in private investment. Also, downtown renovation resulting in new restaurants, new retail, new office spaces, new headquarters in a downtown district, and also housing. So increasing density overall, increasing visitor spending, increasing residents dwelling in our downtown districts, and kind of creating the vibe that any community would love to have. Also, the Hickory Trail, there's more spurred that residential development, not only in single family homes, but mixed use developments as well, and truly position the city to be pedestrian friendly for bikers, also runners, and then additionally that Class A business park, creating those spaces for new industry to move into our community to truly create jobs at an above average wage as well. We could talk about blighted areas. I mean, that connectivity that you talked about, Yaidee. Some of those gateways were tired looking. We had industries that have left behind very, very blighted and dilapidated buildings that were then becoming repurposed into really cool historic mills, and creating gateways that made our community more welcoming to visitors and those who choose to live here. So I think the takeaway truly becomes when the public sector takes the first step, the private sector will follow with confidence and also with resources.
That's excellent. I really appreciate you touching on that, because certainly our mill district was something that really spurred during that same time period, and it was part of our communication during the bond referendum education as well, because we saw that there were some buildings there and the private sector stepped forward and said, hey, we want to do some projects. What does that look like? The city actually implemented something called the Vacant Building Grant, where we started working with communities and trying to make sure that those empty, dilapidated areas were then revitalized. They're constantly getting used all the time now. So thank you so much for that. That was excellent. Mm-hmm. Last question for you. From other communities considering something similar, what advice would you give them on how to engage the business community and maintain alignment throughout such a long-term process?
Yes. My first advice would really be, first of all, know the data. let the data drive the decision making. And we were seeing the data very, very directly, and understood that it created that sense of urgency that we had to do something. And I think the second part that's closely aligned with that is truly unify first. Like the public sector could make the first step, but the business leaders had to be at the table. Using a facilitator, using a consultant from the outside to work with your community, I think is key as well. I mean, we had a consultant that came in and truly helped facilitate those focus group conversations, those one-on-one interviews, that really helped us distill down to those unifying priorities that we could all get behind. We talked, I think the president of our Economic Development Corporation, Scott Millar, he often said, we're all throwing our spears in the same direction, but we need to throw our spears at the same woolly mammoth, is what he said. And so, it really allowed us to kind of swirl our individual kind of siloed thinking and our various efforts around some central points. And I think that is truly key. And what we hear from time and time again, that this exercise as well, not only resulted in things like the bond referendum, it has allowed us to have powerful conversations around workforce development. How do we attract and retain and develop talent for our community? It's helped us have conversations about re-engaging the private sector leadership around community transformation and other issues that are impactful for business to be able to be successful. And so that exercise of having discussions around what are the most critical issues impacting your community and how are we going to address them, has had very much indirect ripple impacts that have even permeated the way we make other decisions in our community. So we talk about our secret sauce being collaboration and partnerships. And this effort, I can dotted line or even direct solid line back to this particular effort that started facilitating those conversations and that unity amongst the various sectors. I also think something that Meg served on the bond commission. So the chamber, when the city came to the chamber and said, we need the business community's endorsement on this bond referendum, we prioritize, number one, the Class A business park, number two, the investments in livability and quality of place, but also number three, we recommended a locally controlled, citizen-led bond commission that allowed for that transparency, and it also allowed for that accountability. Now, that likely slowed the process because, when you get a lot of excited and passionate people in the room, there's good things that also it comes with some potential slowdown. However, that created that transparency between the public sector, the private sector, and just general citizens, the general public, that gave them confidence that the dollars were being spent appropriately. And the other part, showing the ROI is key. As the city has measured that with partnership from the Council of Governments, setting those goals, I think, was important for the business community to see, and celebrating when you exceed them significantly is key. And the other part in celebrating the progress, the city has done a great job of cutting ribbons along the way, just to show when each section is complete, that we as a community can celebrate. Although it's taken some time, it has allowed us to see actually that economic transformation truly visible, and to pause and celebrate that. So those are just a couple of things that I would recommend.
I love that. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add before I turn it, either one of you, before I turn it to the group for questions?
I'd love to give that audience some time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we have 5 minutes. Is there anyone that had, yes?
So I'm a resident of the area, and I just wanted to start by saying I think you guys have done a great job. It's wonderful to have all these walking trails, and I utilize them a lot. I wanted to ask about 127, because there's 3 grocery stores on that
So I'll just. Yes, I'm sorry. Let me repeat her question. So she's from the area and she's asking about Highway 127. There is some sidewalk there, but there's several grocery stores in that area, and she's wanting to know what the city's plans are about being able to provide additional resources for being able to have that connectivity. So when we look at all the different projects and highways and all the major roadways in the area, we actually we have a new plan that we have for our sidewalk study. But what we have now is a practice, if you will. As we move forward with things, now it's the time for, before we start with any kind of construction, before there's any widenings with any roadways, we start having these discussions with NCDOT and other partners for how can we make this more accessible. Can we look at the opportunities to make that into some kind of multi-purpose pathway, if possible, to be able to provide an additional connectivity to the community? Because when we have those big trails, it allows people to be able to bike, walk, and run safely, right, out of the roadway. But when that's not possible, we try to make sure that we can do other things. And so we definitely have those conversations. They're constantly going. So we are looking into that area because it has come up many a times. And I know that NCDOT is planning on doing some road work on 127. And so as we've been in those conversations, we've definitely had that in consideration. I can't tell you exactly what those plans are at the moment, but I will tell you that we do look at that every single time. Any other? Yes.
How much time did you guys take, if you remember, after your 2-week blitz where you guys campaigned a lot from the city for your bond referendum? How much more time was there for businesses or private community to, marinate on that before the referendum?
That's a great question. So he asked, how much time was it when we had to stop from our 2-week time period before we did the actual bond referendum for the community to work together? So I believe it was maybe April or May. I think it was May whenever we finally did the official, okay, we can't talk about it anymore. I want to say May 16th, but please don't double check me on that. But from that time period, it went from May until November because of the election. And so there were several months where the city had to be silent. But that's when the voices were much louder from the community. So citizens were going to different things. They were sharing information. They were asking questions. Our city council was trying to engage with people and answer questions however possible. The business community was also very active behind that. And so we were certainly grateful because that gave us several months in that. I think that's my time, right? Okay. Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.